Welcome to Auburn Community Television and this episode of Meet the Artist. Meet the Artist is supported by the North Auburn Artists to introduce artists in our local community. Today our guest artist is Cheryl Lewis, and this is such a treat. We are actually going to meet a woman who works with chainsaws, all kinds of power tools, and lathes. So I'm really excited to introduce Cheryl.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here. This is going to be just a delight today.
I'm so thrilled to have you. It's really fun to share how this works.
Well, one of the adventures of coming here is just actually the setting, because it is absolutely beautiful. You have a wonderful farm. It's very peaceful.
It is. We moved here from Chicago a year and a half ago, and we were on the 34th floor of a high-rise. So getting to be on a farm with sheep and land and puppies is a wonderful thing.
Well, then let's kind of backtrack into that, because does that mean that you've only been doing this for a year and a half?
I didn't even know that it existed before we moved here. I was buying bowls for our home, and it looked like something that was doable and that I would enjoy doing. And so I got out here and I was at a party and mentioned my interest in learning to turn bowls, and a girl came dashing across the room and said, "My dad turns, he would love to teach you." So I intended to call him, but I didn't have a chance. The next morning before I got out of bed, he was already on the phone calling me, and he became my mentor. He's 85 years old and knew a lot about turning bowls and taught me how.
Well, one of the things when I was kind of trying to figure out what you do, and I thought it was interesting because you call it wood turning, whereas I was always thinking in terms of carving. So there is a distinction between the turning and the carving.
There is. Turning means that it is on a rotating lathe, so it's on a spindle of sorts, and carving would just be more of a manual gouge.
So are the tools then larger that you're working with? Because I imagine there are some carving type of tools that you're using.
Yes, it depends on what you're wanting to do. So you can turn a rolling pin on a lathe between spindles, and you would use smaller tools for some of that work. You can do candlesticks, you can do tops, you can do all sorts of toys. Lots of things can be done on the lathe, but my tools are a bit stouter and longer because of the big pieces of wood that I'm working with.
Well, when we were talking about this initially, one of the things that struck me was when we were just our similar backgrounds in the terms of our ages, because they didn't allow girls to take shop when we were in school. And so we were thinking about is like how different our lives would have turned out had maybe we learned this a little bit younger in our lives.
I think in all these years, the only tool that I've ever owned was a hammer because it was blue and cute. So to go from that to having a bandsaw that's taller than I am, and two lathes, and drills, and grinders, and I've really just had to figure it out as I go along. But I'm a year and a half in now, almost, and I feel very comfortable. And it's amazing what you can learn when you throw yourself into it for hours every day.
Well, it's encouraging because it means that people like me, maybe I could pick up a chainsaw. Or maybe get into things, because honestly, when these tools you're talking about, they scare me.
Well, and since you mentioned the chainsaw, I'm just going to grab this real quick. So, this is my chainsaw. I was my father-in-law's hero because I asked for a chainsaw for Christmas. This is an electric chainsaw, which is much easier for a girl. So, all you really have to do is that, and it's fired up. So you don't have to yank a chain or any of that. And I learned how to be safe with it.
Now, one of the things that we do have here, because you're telling me about what you're looking for when you're looking for wood. And let's start with this size.
This is basically what falls in your yard. So you take a tree down and they cut lengths. Ideally, if you're going to turn something, you want the length to be longer than the diameter. And that gives you a little room for cracking that you can shave off, and you can get your maximum bowl size. So you cut this, and then you will slice that in half with the chainsaw, and you end up with this. And then you put that onto the bandsaw, and you end up with this. This is nearly round. You put this on the lathe and round it the rest of the way off. And then you shape the back side of the bowl, which will be the bottom of your bowl. And then you come around, you flip it, and you carve out the inside of the bowl. And you have the inside of your bowl. This actually is black locust, and this is black locust. So it went from this to this.
Now, you work with, excuse me, you work with several different types of wood.
Yes.
And so you have some examples of what those different types of wood, the type of product you get from them.
I do. I basically work with whatever I can find. So I don't buy wood. I don't buy timber. I find it on the side of the road or friends call when it comes down. This is a Tulip Poplar that someone brought me just the other day. And so that yielded that. This came from a friend's Bradford pear tree. Turns beautifully, turns just like butter, so that's more of a salad bowl size. This one, I'm not even sure what kind of wood this was, but it was a branch piece. You can see the branches here, so they call it a crotch. And I turned it natural edge so the bark stayed on it, but this is thin as a potato chip. So it's really fun. You can just make it up as you go along. It just tells you what it wants to be. This is a burl off of the side of a tree. So when you see those ugly warts on the side of trees, those are the tree reacting to something, but they make beautiful bowls because they have grain that's all over the place. This is a piece of art instead of a functional bowl, and that is box elder burl, and turned it just to make the most of the orange and the red colorings. All of these colorings are natural.
Oh wow, so even this that we have in here, that almost looks like leaves in it. Now it's interesting because this one is deeper. Is this harder to do when you're coming in this deep?
It is. You use hollowing tools. So they also have, I don't have hollow forms because I haven't done that yet, but they have some that you'll see around that look like vases and with very narrow openings at the top, and you use specialized tools to go that far in. Anytime your tool leaves the tool rest to extend too deeply into the wood, you start to get chatter, and that creates problems. So you have to change your tools and use specialized ones.
Now when you select the wood, do you have an idea in mind of what you want to make, or do you let the wood guide you?
The wood really decides because it's going to have cracks that you have to work around or bark that you have to work around. You can, if you want to make the most of a certain feature on it, you're going to have to flip it one way or the other, keep the bark or lose it. I like that the wood gets to decide what it wants to be.
Well, that's it. And you see it merge.
You do,
right
it is.
in front of
It's very much an emergence, yeah.
Oh, that is absolutely amazing.
I agree.
So when you're doing this as well, when you actually get a piece of wood, do you go read up about the wood and say, or was that part of your process of learning when you started out in this?
I read every book I could get my hands on when I first started and watched videos on YouTube, and I didn't have a clue what they were talking about. And then about 6 months in, when I had been turning for a little while, I started to go back and read through those books again, and now it meant something. I'm like, oh, that's what he meant by that. But I'm really lucky. There are 3 clubs around here for wood turners. One's in Nevada City, one's in Auburn, and one is in Sacramento. And I mean, there's hundreds of other turners, but very few of them are women. I can count on 2 hands the women that I know locally, almost nationally, that turn. But the numbers are growing. Women are discovering that it's a form of art, and we're drawn to that.
And maybe through this process and watching you, they're going to say, hey, this wasn't as scary as I thought it would be.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it is intimidating.
Yes, it can be. We have a group called Women in Turning that is a national subset of the national organization, and we're really trying to get women involved, just because we think that it's something they'll enjoy too.
And this is something that is national as well, and so this is really, you've had an opportunity to meet people throughout the United States that are wood turners.
I have. I took a road trip this past summer, and I was kind of missing my lathe because it becomes obsessive, and so I threw out a thing onto social media and said I would love to turn a bowl in every state that I pass through, and so let me know if you want to host me. And I got this flood of responses. So I turned bowls in Louisiana and Colorado and Utah, Nevada, and California before I got home, and I got to meet really fascinating turners along the way.
And did you bring something home from each one of these places?
I did. I had a set of bowls when I got home. This is actually one that I did in Colorado. I had the help of a very talented turner there.
That's an amazing experience, and I think that it's always nice when you have a community of that common interest. It makes an interesting trip.
I agree. I think we're all about community. We want more of that. We want connection, and this is connection to nature and connection to others. And I love knowing that anybody who takes one of these bowls, it's going to go into their home and it'll probably outlive most of us. You know, so I love that the tree's life goes on and also our story goes on.
Now, is there anything that you do once you've made them to try to preserve them so that they're maybe watertight or they can be used as functional?
There are lots of different things that you can put on them, glosses and polyurethane and whatnot. I only use a particular oil because I like how easy it is to reapply. So you'll see that when I put this on here, it begins to bring out this beautiful sheen, and it's very easy. So if you're using something that's food safe and want to wash it, you can lightly wash it and then restore it if it's getting dry.
The colors just come out when you use it.
It is. It's just beautiful. So that is every turner's favorite part, is getting all the way to the end and getting to apply the oil or the finish. I will tell you that not every bowl ends well. So I turned this one the other day, and it was this cute little thing. You get down to the end and you have to flip it around and take off the tenon, which is a piece that you've left on here to grip into the chuck. And if you're not careful, it becomes a big bracelet. And it happens. It happens to everybody. I have my wall of shame where I've just got little bowls that have holes in them. You can put plants in them and make little planters because they need drainage.
Well, can you use it to do like a top?
You can do a lamp. Some people do lampshades out of them.
It'd be a shame to lose this one.
Yeah.
I love the color of the wood in this.
So where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
And I also made this, so you can make your own tools for the shop. So I have my own mallet that I turned. It's very fun.
So you're going to give us a demonstration today.
I would love to.
What kind of wood are you going to be working with?
I'm going to turn Bradford pear, and I'm going to do something that's a little more of a salad bowl size. And I'll try to blaze through it really quickly. Because of safety, you have to wear a shield, so it'll be difficult for me to talk. So I will just dive in and start making some shavings.
Now, before you get started, and we've done all of this where you've basically now have this block of wood, do you have to allow it to dry for any period of time before we come and put it on the lathe?
Some people do. I don't. Most professional turners will go through a process where they rough out a bowl. I probably have some roughed bowls laying around here, which just means that you carve them a little bit and you leave them thick and you stick them aside for almost a year. Let them do all of their drying and then come back and you turn away any cracks or fissures or warping that was there. And then you get a perfectly round bowl. I like to turn green. It's not as difficult. You'll see the shavings that come off are just these glorious spirals. It's easier, it's more fun to me, and then you might get slight warping as it dries. It's hard to tell here. Sometimes they'll go football shaped. Some people don't like that. Some people love it because it's more organic. So I do a little of each.
And the bowl you were just holding is of the same wood that you're working with today?
It is. Yes, it is. So we will hopefully go from a chunk of wood to something kind of like this.
It's so beautiful, buttery color. I love it.
Thank you.
Let's get started.
All right.
This is the main action right here, and so you already have a piece of wood that's here ready for you to turn. And I know that you can't talk a lot when you're actually doing it, so I'm going to step aside for you to do what you do, and maybe you can explain to the audience when you think is appropriate time. So thank you again.
My pleasure. So I took one of the pieces of wood off of the bandsaw, and it's in a round, and I affixed a faceplate to the bottom of it. And so that's what's holding this to the lathe. This part is scrolled up just for extra security, but basically it's being held by a faceplate. The safety first, before you start turning. I always wear a smock because you get shavings all in your shirt if you don't. And these things are very handy, keeping your clothes reasonably clean. And then also women or anyone with long hair needs to pull your hair back because that is a real hazard. So your hair goes up, and you want your sleeves to be up if you're wearing sleeves. Not everybody agrees with wearing a glove. The key is just not to put the glove where it doesn't belong. I like to wear one because the shavings can come off pretty hot sometimes, and it will literally burn the side of your hand. So I wear a glove with the fingertips cut out, and always wear a shield. So I'm going to start turning the outside of the bowl, which is basically the bottom of the bowl right now. So I'll shape this around, and then I'll create a little piece on the end that will enable us to flip it and carve out the inside. So here we go. So I'm going to leave this on a low speed until we get a lot of this knocked off on the side corner. Then I can speed it up. Now I'm just going to start knocking some of this bark off so I can get the bottom level. And I should tell you that as many turners as there are that many different ways to do something. So this is not necessarily the right way or the wrong way. It might seem wrong to someone else. It's simply what works for me. I want to create something called a tenon on the bottom of the bowl because that's what's going to hold it when I flip it. I made this little tool so that I have the correct diameter of that tenon. I can just tell at a glance what I want it to be. I've just created what's called a dovetail because that will grip more firmly into the chuck when I switch over. You want to get it to go just as fast as you can without the table actually shaking. To get less bumping around that way. Just trying to get through a lot of this bark. That's what makes it still so bumpy. We may even decide to leave some of it as a feature on the bottom of the bowl. A lot of people like that. So I can tell that my tool's getting a little dull. I'm just going to pop over to the grinder, and in a flash I'll have a sharp tool again. Here we go again. So there are a few things that I'm taking into consideration as I do this. I'm trying to create a shape that's just going to gently blend into this top rim. The rim will come down a little bit because I have some cracking here, and to get completely rid of it, this will have to lower how tall the bowl actually goes. So the top of the bowl will be about there. And I want just to have a real graceful curve, like a salad bowl, with as small a bottom as possible. That's usually the most graceful. You can tell when you're turning bark because it comes off as sawdusty, and when you're turning wood because it has these beautiful curly ribbons that fly all around you. It's really fun. It's kind of like confetti at a party. So if I wanted to completely get rid of this bark, you can tell how it goes in right here. I could do an OG shaped bowl that would go up and out like that, and I could just scoop right through all that bark. Or I can leave it, I just have to remember that once I get to the inside of the bowl, if I go very thin, I'm going to hit the other side of that bark. So do I want a hole there or not? If not, then I have to keep going a little bit lower so that I can miss it. So I think we're going to go just a little bit lower. Okay, so this part's actually very important. That's my tenon, and I'm going to leave a dot on it so that when I come back to take that tenon off, I can see exactly where the middle is. It helps me find the center. So I'm just creating a little dot right there with this tool rest, or tailstock. And I'm going to mark it with my marker so that there's no question about where it was. I want to go back to exact center on the other side. Okay. And now I'm just going to take this guy off. He has done his job. And now we're going to shape the bottom just a little bit more. There's something they call the turner's shuffle. It's like a dance. So I'm not actually moving this tool along the rest, I'm moving my body forward and back. So this stays clamped to my hip, and then I just move my body back, and so the tool goes with it. I'm hitting a lot of bark, that's why it's bumpy. So I'm checking my form. Does it have a graceful arc? It's a little lumpy. So let's keep working on it. Here you can decide to do all sorts of different things. I can create ridges. It's just layers that go all the way up it. There are tools that I can use to make certain patterns on here, or I can just make it as clean as possible. So I think I'm going to leave this inner layer of bark, but I'm going to take the rest of the top one off. So we'll have some bark on the finished bowl, which is really cool. You get to bring your tree into your kitchen. instead of making this the perfect form, take a little bit of time with the bark to just get it perfectly shaped. I'm going to go ahead and flip it around so you can see what it looks like when we carve the inside of the bowl. So first, I have to unscroll it. And then I'm going to take this faceplate off. There are other ways to do it. You can pin it between the tailstock and a sharp piece here, so you don't have to use a faceplate. It's just usually the route that I go. I like the extra security. The power drills come in handy in turning because you can also use them to put sanding attachments when you're sanding your bowl at the end. I had never had a power drill before either. It's the oddest thing. Sometimes I'll come down to my shop and I won't even turn. I'll just sit down here. I never would have thought that would feel so peaceful. But it does. It's my little space. Where I can be completely messy. So this is called a 4-jaw chuck. And this scrolls on here. And it has movable pieces that will expand or contract to hold this tenon that we made on the bottom. And that's why we made it dovetail, because these things are shaped dovetail. So you just put that on there and pinch it. And then you just give it a few extra tightens. Tighten it there. Tighten it there. Tighten it all the way around. Okay, now we're ready to do the inside. So we're making progress. So we're going to square off this space. This will become our rim. And we already talked about the cracks that we have here. So we want to turn it down probably that much. It's just going to take a few passes. They actually have something called a coring system, which is pretty cool. You can use a tool that will go in and scoop out another bowl from the inside. Sometimes you can get 2 or 3 or 4. I don't use one of those, but they're pretty neat. I'm going to tighten this just a little bit more. So when you're turning, I just want to stand slightly to the side so that you're not in the line of fire. These bowls do come off sometimes. I turn green, which means they can shift a little bit, so you always want to keep checking them, make sure they're tight. See, we've got this big old crack coming right here. I just want to get below it. Let's check the crack. It's almost done. Gotta go a little bit farther. We could always seal that with glue and use shavings. You could use a little bit of sawdust. If you have big cracks, you can use turquoise. You could use coffee grounds. Lots of people use different ways to seal cracks when they just end up with one they can't get rid of. But I think since we're so close to the bottom of this one, we're just going to keep going and lowering the rim until it's gone. It's always a shame to lower the rim from a pricing standpoint. The way that I price my bowls is using a formula that I was told by other wood turners, and it's basically the height times the width times 2.5, and then you add on your taxes, your credit card fees, and then if it's a special wood that you can't get much of, that might go up a little bit. If it's one that just required a lot of effort, it might go up a little bit. If it's just one you don't really want to part with, you might go up a little bit. But your base rate is typically height times diameter times 2.5 plus tax. So I hate to lose height. Alright, the crack is gone enough. I can seal that one little fissure that's there. So let's start carving out the inside. I can almost double my speed because I got rid of so much of the wonky stuff. You can pretty much just use your right hand to do this. The thumb is just kind of keeping it on a pivot. You find that bevel and it'll just ride its way in. I think of this as a pointer, so it's pointing the direction that I want it to go. So I stay right on that slope. And I want the inner slope to follow the outer slope, so I know exactly what kind of slope I'm looking for. This is my favorite part because of all the curlies. It's confetti. decide how thin you want your rim to be. You can leave it a little chunky, or you can leave it super thin. You saw the potato chip one earlier. I might take another swipe when I get a little lower. You can tell you're getting uniform thickness. My pinchers are on the other side of the room. By using a particular tool, or you can just use your fingers. Your fingers are very sensitive and you can tell. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Magically they appear. So, I can see this is the diameter here. It's the same diameter here. So we're following the same diameter on the wall around, which is great. We're going to start to slope, so we just want to pay attention to when we have to change the slope on the inside. Change, and the reason that they do is depending on the thickness of the wall and also how far this tool is leaning over that tool rest. So it gets a lot rockier the more it's overhanging. but it's okay. It still gets the job done. You can get different tools that give you a little more reach. And we're getting pretty close to the bottom. My little handy dandy cheat sheet of how to tell when I'm getting close to the bottom is to lay this across the side and that to the middle, and then I carry it up to the rim and see if I'm getting close. So I've still got some room to play with. I want to leave about that much to create an underside on the bottom of your bowl. So I've probably got about that much more to go. And for all practical purposes, we have a bowl. I'm going to smooth off these corners real quick, just so they'll be a little rounded. And you could do the rest with sandpaper. So this basically went from a tree in your yard to a bowl that still has to go through a drying process. You can put it in some wet shavings for a while and it'll finish out any drying that it's going to do. I usually put it in a brown paper sack with some shavings straight off of the ground, and it'll hold its moisture in a little while, and then I can come back and put it on the lathe with this and do all of the sanding, and then this will come off. So there's a bowl.
Wow, that was absolutely amazing. And I have to say, is all of this curly cues that go round and around you is just brings just extra to it. You know, as I was watching you, a couple of things came to my mind, and one is that, as you said, it's not something that you can predict. You really do have to go with the flow of the wood.
Yes. If I'd had my druthers, I probably would have taken off the bark, but look how nice that looks. It's actually kind of nice. And it insisted that it stay or go to a really small bowl. I didn't want a small bowl.
I like that in it. I like that effect. The other thing I also noticed about it is about problem solving as well. Because as you're working through it, you're like, oh, I've got this issue here. It's not going to come out. And so you had to work with it as you were going.
That's very true. My career was as a journalist, and I constantly was having to solve the puzzle of how to bring an article together in the best way. So this is just an extension of that. I love it. I love that part of the creative process the most.
Well, the other is too, as I was watching this, and this bowl is going around here, and it's in a blur. And I'm thinking, how do you see what is actually going on in terms of this bowl?
You can watch the shadow of it up along the upper ridge and actually see what's happening. So you'll see the carving happening, and you can see if there's a shadow piece when you've got a lot of bark, you get interruptions. Yeah, you actually see it happen. And like I said, there's so many turners around me who are so much better than I am. I'm such a beginner. They'll watch this process and they'll think, oh, Cheryl, why are you doing it that way? But I really enjoy it. I do enjoy that I'm improving, but I enjoy that at the end of the day I have something that's functional and useful and beautiful.
Well, this has absolutely been a delight for me, and I understand that you do participate in the Plaster Art Studio Tour.
I do. I'll be in the November show.
And do you have a demonstration that's going on at the time? Or?
I do. I demo the whole time, all 3 days.
And have you ever had somebody say, hey, can I try some of that?
I have. I actually let a child help me turn a bowl during last year's tour, and there have been some young girls who wanted to come back and just hang out and learn the process, and I'm so eager for them to do that.
Well, that is exciting, because you get to pass it on to the next generation.
Yeah, I'd really like that.
Now, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
Well, my email is CherylRLewis@AOL.com, or you can find me on Instagram at TheUturner. TheUturner. I have a Facebook page under that name as well. So look me up.
I want to thank you so much for your time today, and especially for doing this demonstration. And I don't think that we could have ever explained this in words. It really is something that you need to see. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
And I want to thank you for tuning in to Auburn Community Television, either by tuning in to Wave Channel 20 or on YouTube. I also want to thank you for coming in and being one of our guests on each and every episode. Who knows, through this show, you may find that you have an artist living just around the corner, or maybe you'll discover the artist within you.